Hello and welcome, my name is Nilaus and this is another tutorial of Angel's Mod Smelting. Well, the first part of the smelting we ended up with ingots, and this time we're going to do the later part of it, where we take the ingots, put them into an induction furnace that makes it into molten steel, and that goes then into a casting machine that takes the molten steel and makes it into steel plates. Now, that seems pretty simple, and that should be it for the tutorial, right? But the brilliant thing about it, what Angel has added, is actually when you play Bob's mods, there is a lot of ores here, you can see, and they are not equally used, but they are often equally produced in the sorting mechanisms. So you will end up with a lot of nickel and zinc and other components that you don't really need in the same quantities. So what Angel has added is actually alternative formulas here for iron, for a couple ones for aluminium, and a couple ones for a lot for titanium, a lot for steel, and then some special ones for solder. So what I want to show you is taking the example of steel, the different ways of producing steel. So this is the very simple one. Please note that the induction engine's MK level and the smelting machine MK level do not match. This is because a Mark 1 induction can feed exactly a Mark 4. This is kind of unfortunate, so you're going to need a hell of a lot more casting machines to match higher levels of induction. However, this is a basic one. Steel ingots go in and steel plates comes out. Now let's make it a bit more interesting here. Okay, thank you, autosave. Now we add silicon to the steel production. So we have an equal amount of steel and silicon going in here. This is again a Mark 1. This goes into, and now we need two Mark 4 casting machines. And that goes out and then doubles the amount. So at this point, if you don't want to spend as much iron getting that into steel, then you have the option of using silicon, which is not used for that much. I mean, you use a bit of quartz, you use a bit of silicon, but not really that much. So we will most likely have tons and tons of silicon, and now you can just mix steel with a one-to-one match between steel and silicon. Then it becomes interesting here, because now we have a new component here called manganese. This is something that's being added as part of the Angel smelting. So this is not part of Bob's mod, the same as chrome and actually platinum as well. This is the manganese is currently a bit hard to get because it doesn't come from sorting. It only comes from this really advanced formula here where we take some mud water. I've shown that in one of my previous ones, the one with sodium chains and was it? Yeah, the washing and sodium chain. So you do go through the washing process, all of these steps, and then you can get a teeny tiny amount of manganese and chrome ore. Let's start it. Let's have it run. Again, the same ratio, 1 Mark 1 beats 2 Mark 4s. And this is because you have, in this case, 24 in per 4 seconds. So that's 6 per second. This is why I'm marking it here. And it goes on. So we get a pretty decent amount. Moving on to sort of the most advanced part of the formula, let's just kick it off just to see what we have. Now in this case, you are only using 1/3 steel in order to produce it. So 12 steel ingots, 12 cobalt. That's not exactly something you have in vast quantities. And then 12 nickel, which is something you have in vast quantities. But in this case, if you want to lighten the load on your iron for steel, then this is a great way of doing it. You can see here, this is 1 Mark 3 that has crafting speed 2. So this one corresponds to 2 of these. And we're then doubling it up as well. So over here as well, the last one of the steel production, it's also important in this case to note that you actually must use a Mark II. So for example, let's have a look at this. For the steel, this can be produced in all 4 machines, but this one can only be produced in Mark IIs and higher. Now in this case, you can see it's just strolling along. It's very well balanced. Every time it goes out, it gets used. These are all green. The green marker from the bottleneck mod indicates that they're always producing, and they're not quite filling up a red belt, but it's not that far off. So that's how you craft steel. And the same is the case for titanium, aluminium, and what was the last one? Aluminium, iron? Yeah, okay. I don't think that's going to be relevant for iron, doing these kind of alternatives for iron. I would much rather just make the iron straight up and then use these ones for steel. But that's a different matter. Now let's look at another interesting new formula. This is Well, I don't know. This is the usual formula for solder. So you can make the solder the normal way from Angel's Mod, just taking the solder plates. Well, it's actually a bit of an annoying formula. You need tin and lead, but if you want to get a 1-on-1 relation here instead of a 4-to-7 relationship from Bauhaus Mods, you can take and fill in 12 tin, 12 lead, goes in here, becomes molten solder. I know there are different ways of pronouncing that, but I don't care. And then comes out here. Very convenient, it's okay. It doesn't add much, but you can take the ingots that you have produced in an efficient manner. The alternative is, if you go over here, this is much more relevant. I don't know if it is, because lead is not particularly used, but zinc, for example, you can now combine tin and zinc and also make the solder this way. Same basic formula, get quite a decent amount. They are producing, again, we have a crafting speed of Mark 1 that feeds into 2 Mark 4 casting machines. And there you have that one. And then if we go over and get it really a lot more advanced, you have this formula that takes, in this case, tin, copper, and silver. I don't know, because silver is not that easy to come by. I think actually in this case I would just prefer the original, because you have tons of lead and tin early on. You get it directly from rubite and bobmonium. So, and you don't need in a vast quantity. So I wouldn't use my silver for this. It's probably other uses for silver. But it does give us an option. And you can see here it almost fills up a red belt, almost-ish. And that's pretty good. So you will definitely easily have different ways of creating solder in vast quantities. Now the last thing I want to show you that also is part of this mod is actually, this is more of a space-saving measure than anything else. You take the copper. It's a very basic one, basic recipe. There's only one formula for copper. You take copper ingots out, you get molten out. But the molten can then be crafted into 2 different parts. It can either be crafted directly into 4 molten copper into 4 copper plates, or you can go directly into copper wire coils. The point of going into copper wire coils is that you have one item. You get the wire coils and they go in here. And the wire coils will then be crafted into even more cables. Hold on. That's, yep. Just want to check. Copper. Actually the cable. Here. So you get 2 copper cables from 1 copper plate. Yes. Here. You get 2 copper cables from each copper wire. Well, and if we look at the copper thing, this recipe takes 8 molten to 8 copper wire. Yes. So it doesn't produce more ingredients. Currently, this one will not take productivity modules, but I'm sure that's something that will be fixed. Otherwise, this does not compete with the original formula. The whole point of this is that you can go directly to the copper cables, which is what you need a lot of. It can also be done in a slightly more advanced way for the gilded copper wire. So we do the gilded copper wire by doing simultaneous smelting of gold and copper. That merges in here. This I have not been able to do in a really clean way, but this is okay. This is not bad. They go in there, 2 different types of molten things coming in, and again goes into the gilded copper wire. You will easily craft enough of this. So maybe like this setup will probably be enough for your entire base. This is only used for very few, very high level components. However, much more relevant, this one, especially for me, since it's an ingredient. The tin copper wire is an ingredient for the green and red wire, and I need my fair share of green and red wire for all of the circuit networks I'm building. So in this case, this is quite a simple and easy way to make the copper wire, the tin copper wire. It doesn't require that many machines. So I would actually prefer this way of making tin copper wire, and I think that honestly, this setup, that's going to be enough for whatever you need. So that really highlights the 3 different aspects of this mod. You have, first and foremost, I think this is the primary objective. You have the different ways of creating some of the components like iron, steel, aluminum, titanium. There are different ways of creating them that gives you some flexibility on the raw material usage. Second one is different formulas for solder, that you can create them directly instead of going to plates and then moving on. It's quite convenient. I don't know if strictly necessary, but it is convenient. And then the direct production of the cables, both the copper cable, the gilded copper cable, and the tin copper wire, not cables, but wire. So that really concludes the review of the smelting mod. I'm sure there will be lots of other things added later, but at this point, this gives you an idea that the reason why you put it into tin or to ingots first is because the ingots will need to be combined in different ways. So don't build like straight up from the iron production. You go from iron to steel ingots. That loses some flexibility, but put them into the ingots, transport the ingots to wherever you have your casting and casting process, and then cast it from there. Combine and cast from there. So thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in another video. Cheers.